Tappy Chat. It's Tappy Chat. Tappy Chat.
Hi everyone and welcome to a Tappy Chat. My name is Alex and today we're talking all things newborn really. We've gone back to the newborn phase. In particular, I wanted to focus on all those expensive items, I suppose. The newborn transportation phase when we're looking at slings and prams and cots and car seats. And the reason I think I've really zoned in on this is, well, it's manyfold, but I've been working with a lot of newborns lately. I've been doing a lot of coffee mornings. I've been running some sort of sling workshops. And the conversation, not sling workshops, like sling dance workshops, I think, is a better way to put it. And what's kind of come up is a lot of kind of questions from mums about the right things to wear and the right things to use. It's quite a source of overwhelm when you're already dealing with a new arrival coming. I've had a few emails as well from people that are listening. Yay, I have listeners. A lovely couple that were expecting very soon, and they had about 1 billion questions. I couldn't even get through them on the email, all to do with like, do we buy this? When do we buy this? What are we looking for in this? And it is an absolute minefield. So let's dive in there with my guest today, who is, I found her just a few weeks ago and we sat down and had a chat, and honestly we could have gone on for days. We didn't get that chat finished, so we're here to do it today. I'm going to introduce you to my guest, who is Martha, who runs the Baby Brain, and she is my little guru on all of these things. I have discovered her, and I very much want you to discover her too. So welcome to Tappy Chat, Martha. Thank you for having the time to come and see us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I've done a ramble, which is quite classic for me, and probably not even begun to explain what you do. So how about you just tell us a bit about yourself and the Baby Brain and what you do?
Sure. I always find it very hard to put into concise
Yeah.
sentence, but basically, I'm a baby gear consultant, so I advise on anything and everything for your baby. My main focuses and areas of expertise are slings and carriers and car seats. But I also have a lot of experience with everything else you might need for a baby: prams and strollers and cribs and high chairs and you name it. So kind of the main purpose of my role is to help people decide what they need, when they need it, whether or not they need to spend very much money on it, where they can make savings, both financially, but also on space and stuff.
Amazing.
So trying to kind of encourage people not to go overboard, because it can be really overwhelming.
It really can. And yeah, you end up with all this kind of like stuff. And you're just like, when do I need this? And how much? Oh my goodness, I spent a fortune on Amazon late in the night just trying to work out whether I really needed this essential item. So what kind of inspired you to get into this?
So it started really with the sling side of things. I've got 3 kids of my own, all of whom absolutely detested being put in a car seat or a stroller until they were about a year old. So needless to say that in that time, especially my first baby, I tried millions of those things because I thought, oh, maybe the equipment is the problem. And most of the time, the equipment's not actually the problem. So that's something I've learned with lots of trial and error. But carrying my babies was something that I did a lot and that was successful, and that allowed us, that space to bond with one another and not be stressed all the time. It reduces crying, help them sleep deeper and longer, and just really make especially the early weeks and months much more kind of positive phase. But I'm somebody that likes to kind of go down a bit of a rabbit hole and research things. Anything, it can be anything really, but obviously with having a baby, suddenly you're opened up to this new world of baby equipment. And I actually find it really enjoyable looking into it and researching. So, watching hours and hours and hours on end of YouTube, like review videos of how to fold various compact strollers and, the different features of high chairs and all sorts of stuff. So kind of like through gathering that knowledge and also through making my own mistakes, I feel like I have a lot to share with new parents, especially now, and also just knowing like how much excess that there is and that there can be, and that I went through myself, like having things that you don't use, being given things by friends who didn't use them either, you know, and just filling your once minimalist, lovely adult home with like tons and tons of baby paraphernalia, which if it's not actually useful, just becomes that kind of like visual clutter and, you know, visual overwhelm. So yeah,
Yes.
that's where I'm coming from.
Yes, I do. I do know that very well. The moment I think a lot of friends realized we were expecting our first and they already had children, suddenly like, well, you're going to need one of these. I've got one of these. You're going to, before you know it, your entire loft is filled with other people's stuff. And you're just like, do I need this? Do I not? You know, and it's like you have absolutely no clue. And then your mission after your first child is to try and find the next parent you can kind of push all
Pass
this.
it all on to.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing. I think everybody will find different things useful and different things
Yeah.
essential to their own parenting journey. Like there are so many variables in that, you know, like the this kind of spaces that you live in, the
Mm,
activities that you do day to day, whether you drive or not, or you know what your mobility is like, and all sorts of things. And so, actually, even though well-meaning friends and family will be like, "Oh, we found this absolutely invaluable,"
mm,
um, it's it's kind of like it's good information, but it's not necessarily going to be an essential for you. But until you're doing what you're doing, you don't really know.
yeah.
The main piece of advice I give people who haven't yet kind of like started collecting too much stuff is that when somebody offers you something, um, if it's they say to you, oh, I've got this lovely, you know, whatever, it's brand new, we've never even used it, then it's probably not going to be particularly useful, because if your friend never used it,
Yeah.
why will you?
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like people's reactions when I say that, they're like, oh my God, of course. Like it makes so much sense when you think about it like that.
Mm,
Whereas when you're offered something that maybe looks a little bit ragged around the edges and, you know, really well used, and they kind of offer you that and they go, oh, this was an absolute lifesaver for me. You know, we have a tendency to look at it and be like, oh, you know, like especially if it's your first baby, like, oh, I want something nice, I want something kind of new. But actually, what they're giving you is like perfect advice. Like that thing was actually useful for them. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to take the one they're offering, but it's showing the kind of items that actually kind of like pull their weight, you know, once
Well, I
you own
guess
them.
in a way, you know, it's something you can try and discard once you kind of are down the line, rather than spending the money and then going, this is no good for me, or,
Yeah.
you know. I remember as sort of my early parenthood, sort of first child, you know, it is insanely overwhelming. And I think the biggest thing you're always worried about is safety. I mean, I had an August baby, my firstborn, so I was like, I can't possibly use a sling. It's an August heat wave. We'll both overheat. This is, you know, there's the sun, and I can't be out in the sun, and you know, or it's sort of like, you know, oh, I can't put him in this because it, you know, it's he can't be in the car seat for more than 10 minutes, and I've got to get him out, and you know, just absolute fear, because I don't know, your feed gets awash at that time with sort of like, this is dangerous, that is dangerous, this will happen, that will happen.
Mm.
I mean, how do you even begin to kind of wade through and talk someone down off that level of overwhelm and just sort of help them?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's a really interesting question, because I think like some anxiety and apprehension with a newborn baby is completely natural,
Yeah.
and it's obviously how we keep them safe and how we kind of like get them to develop and you know grow and everything. There's a point where that kind of anxiety tips over into not so typical, where a parent might need more support than just, you know, talking through you know what they're using with their baby and baby safety. But obviously for you kind of like average parenting journey where you've just had a baby and it's the first time ever and you've never done any of these things before, and you keep reading snippets of information about you should do this and you shouldn't do that and whatever, it does become really overwhelming. So for me, the first thing I say is that rules are there for a reason. You know, rules or guidelines are there for a reason, and the rule itself isn't necessarily the important thing. The reason is the important thing. So once you can understand why a rule or guideline is in place, you can make informed decisions that won't make you feel like you're spiraling or, you know, you're completely overwhelmed. So you know, for example, like just being told, oh, you shouldn't keep a newborn baby in a car seat for more than 10 minutes
Mm,
as a rule isn't actually particularly useful, because it does induce anxiety and it makes you panic that if you ever, leave your baby for more than 10 minutes, something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah.
What's really important is to understand why people are saying that. And of course, in car seats, it's because the position that baby is in a car seat isn't optimal for their breathing and their airways. So in the event of a crash in a car, the safest position for the baby is to be slightly upright. But that for a newborn baby isn't the safest position for their breathing and airways. So, we're trading off, we're making trade-offs for our baby's safety. If we're in a car and we crash, obviously that's really, really important. So we're putting them slightly upright in the car seat. But because that tends to encourage babies to go into a kind of chin on chest position, that can compromise their airways and their breathing. The younger the baby, the higher the risk. And the lower the muscle tone of the baby, the higher the risk. And as they get older and stronger, the risk starts to kind of reduce and lessen. And I think just understanding that that's why the rule's in place in the first place relieve some of that anxiety and help us make decisions, because sometimes it could simply be, that an adult sits in the back of the car with the baby where possible, or if you're traveling on your own, that you put the baby in the passenger seat rather than behind you, so that you can see them and keep an eye on them, and you can see that the chin is lifted off their chest, and they're not slumping in their car seat. Or, as was the case with my babies, they hated it anyway, so they cried the whole time. So if the baby's crying, they're obviously breathing. So that,
Yes.
although stressful when you're driving, it's actually
Yeah.
quite reassuring. And if a baby's crying for 10 minutes in the car seat, your 10-minute rule about worrying about their airways sort of becomes,
Yeah.
irrelevant. So there's no point worrying about those two things at the same time. I think understanding the why and then being able to make your own decisions around it, rather than just taking like the rules and guidelines at face value and, worrying that you're not implementing everything all the time.
Yeah. What are common worries that people come to you with?
I'd say the biggest one that is with slings, and it's funny because it's absolutely not the biggest risk. So the one I hear the most with slings is people are worried about their baby's hips.
Yes.
So they're worried that they're going to cause damage to their baby's hips. The biggest risk in a sling is airways, baby's breathing, much like the car seat. So, in a suboptimal kind of carrying position, or a baby that's in a carrier that's too big for them, there's a chance that they can slump. The carrier could cover the face and kind of obstruct the breathing, the airways, suffocation, etc. With a sling used properly, those risks are extremely minimal, but they are the risks with carrying. Whereas people worry about their baby's hips because advertising and marketing has made healthy hips a real focus of selling slings and carriers. And there's a badge that companies can pay for to stick on their product that says their product has been certified as hip healthy. And so everybody assumes that that's really, really important. And also that if a carrier doesn't have that badge, then it must not be hip healthy. The idea that you can cause damage to your baby's hips by carrying them incorrectly in a sling is a little bit misguided. It's very unlikely that you're going to do so. It's more that babies who do already have kind of pre-existing conditions with their hips, you can exacerbate them if you wear them in a carrier a certain way. But treatment for babies with hip development issues is usually to hold the baby in a kind of squat position, which actually is what most slings and carriers these days do. So in fact, you're kind of like doing a really positive thing. However, if your baby doesn't have any hip issues and you carry them with their legs straight down and dangling in a carrier, you're not going to cause any. So it's a big concern for people that doesn't actually exist as a problem. So kind of like unraveling that and remembering what the real risks are and making those the priority and those the focus. But it's really difficult when there are companies there trying to sell their products and they use these tactics to do so. We consume that all the time. Like, even if we don't realize, we're kind of consuming that through marketing and social media and everything. And so it's really difficult to know what to worry about and what not to.
And it's fascinating, actually. I mean, having only recently kind of dived into the world of slings, and I never dared go and see that there are sling libraries. We're in Southeast London. There's loads of sling experts, but I remember just being terrified to go and see one in case I was going to get told off because I was doing it all wrong and I was endangering my baby. And I'd worked out how it works, so surely that was fine. But yeah, only recently having learnt the proper way and how actually, they need to be quite tight to your body and how it can really help you then with carrying and supporting your back. I was, oh my goodness, I was making life very hard for myself when a bit of advice and help and, surprisingly, you think you want it nice and loose so that they can breathe and turn their head, but surprisingly, when I had one strapped on properly, I was like, oh, that's really nice. It's really kind of, especially with dancing and moving, it's not pulling my back down and it feels like they're kind of naturally kind of shaped to your body.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really
Yeah.
important to wear a sling nice and tight to the baby and to your body so that the baby doesn't have room to slump down inside.
Mm,
So, these things are like really beneficial for safety, but like you've just kind of hit on there as well, is like for your own comfort as well. Like if you actually want to carry your baby
mm,
because you think it'll be really nice, but you try and it's super uncomfortable because your baby feels really heavy because maybe your sling is loose or your straps are
yeah.
digging in your shoulders or your neck or something. You're more likely to stop and give up and just think, oh well, it's not for me. And that's a real shame if it's something that you actually want to do.
Yeah.
So these little tweaks and little bits of advice to make it not only kind of safer for your baby, but much more comfortable and enjoyable for you as the parent and as the adult, then you're more likely to have a kind of successful journey with that.
With wearing, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of benefits to sort of slings and baby wearing. Is there any kind of certain slings that work for certain effects, if you want to be closer bonded to your baby, or if you're out and about and more active, or your baby's a little bit bigger, or is it really just down to sort of a lot of personal choice and personal comfort?
So most of the time, it's completely personal choice. The only thing that makes a difference when choosing a sling or carrier for your baby is that whatever you choose is appropriate for your baby's age
Right.
and size. So more size than age, to be honest. If you have a big carrier that doesn't adjust and you put a tiny baby in it, it's not going to be safe. But if you have the correct carrier for the age and stage of your baby,
Mm.
there are hundreds of choices within that.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
nothing really makes one better than another unless it works better for you. So people will often say, oh, well, we've got this one, but if it's not the best, then we're happy to take your recommendation on what's the best.
Mhm.
And the thing is, you could spend £10 on a carrier, you could spend £400 on a carrier. And really what it boils down to is how does it fit your body? Does it keep your baby safe? Are you confident using it? Do you know how it works? And can you reach the buckles? And can you tighten the straps? And if it fits your baby safely and you are comfortable and you like it, then that's the best carrier. And it might be the £10 one and it might be the £400 one.
Mm.
So, there really is no right or wrong in terms of choosing a carrier, and there is no kind of best or worst either. As babies grow and develop, like people often do use different things because what suited you when your baby was 2 weeks old will be very different to what suits you when they're 18 months old. Although these days there are some options that will do that whole time period as long as it's adjusted correctly and you understand how the carrier adjusts and works. But yeah, it really is just personal preference and comfort. And so it can be overwhelming with how much choice there is, but it also at the same time, it means if you've got one or two and you've tried them and you like them, then that's great.
Yeah.
You crack on. There's no reason to seek something else unless you're struggling or you're uncomfortable or you're not sure it really fits the baby properly.
Mhm.
So yeah, no best.
Dads as well, because you see a lot of dads doing baby wearing. Do they tend to favour a slightly different carrier? I mean, they're a different body shape. Do you find that,
Yeah, so in their
you
heads they do. In their heads they do. Same for women as well, though. I'd say it goes across everybody. Different ideas in their mind about how they would like to carry their baby and what sort of carrier they think they are going to like.
Mm,
And quite often, if I see, a heterosexual couple, man and a woman, in pregnancy before the baby's born, and I come to find out a bit more, I will often get the woman telling me, "Oh, I really love the look of the wrap. It looks so soft and cozy for the baby, and we can cuddle. It looks comfortable for around the house,
yeah.
sitting down and doing whatever." And the man will say, oh yeah, I've seen this black one with these big buckles and it looks really supportive. And I think it'd be really good for walking, taking the baby out for walks, and going outdoors. So already they kind of got different ideas in their mind about what they're going to use what circumstance they're going to use the carrier in. And people do absolutely develop a preference once they are using them about, okay, I really like this one when I'm walking out and about outside, and I really love this one when I'm at home. But ultimately, any carrier, any sling can be used in any circumstance. Your baby has to be just as safe, whether you are in your house or you're walking around outside. So as long as the carrier fits properly and is safe for the baby, it doesn't matter which one you're using in which circumstance. And quite often I will get, both man and a woman in the situation to try both types of carrier and sling. So try the one that the other liked and try the one that they thought they would like. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, they both come out of the appointment wanting a stretchy wrap.
Yes. Oh, I love the stretchy wrap.
And they're surprised by how supportive it feels. Like they go, I could definitely go for a walk around the park using this. And it's like, yeah, you can. And it's really empowering.
You're looking at a piece of fabric and going, how is that going to keep my baby safe? That is down to a knot and a tie. How is that? Surely the buckles are safer, but yeah, it's funny. Once it's on, it feels really.
It's so secure. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting. I've done an experiment where we tie a wrap, and I'm not with a real baby, but I've put in a doll which is weighted, so it's nice and heavy, and it feels like a real baby, into the wrap, and then undone the knot of the wrap and bounced up and down a bit.
Yeah.
And the baby doesn't go anywhere.
Wow.
So it's a really nice visual for people who are kind of saying, I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself to tie a knot and it keep my baby safe. But actually, by the time you've tied your knot, you've sent the fabric around your body about 3 times in a row. So the baby's really nicely, wrapped to you like a bandage, nice and snug. And not coming undone is the least of anybody's worries.
Yeah.
It
can be a bit bewildering. I seem to remember just like always having fabric and going, right, I'm out in a restaurant. I've now got to go do this choreography and get this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's like tying your shoelaces, though. The first couple of times you do it is quite overwhelming. You have to use your brain a lot. Once you've done it a few times, your body takes over and your muscles remember. So I think the big advantage of a stretchy wrap is that actually once you've tied it on your body, you can leave it on all day long, take the baby in and out, which people don't often realize. Kind of think you take the baby out and then you take off the wrap. It makes sense. But actually, if you leave it on your body, you avoid those situations like you're saying, like in the restaurant. I remember with my eldest, like in the supermarket car park, I'd brought the wrap with me to carry him around the supermarket, but then I was having to tie it in the car park. And I had a phone call with my sister later on, told her about how stressful the whole experience was. And she said, you could just tie the wrap at home and wear it in the car. And then when you get there, it's ready to put the baby in. And I was just like, you've blown my mind, So it could be a really useful tool, but not everybody gets on with the same things. There's absolutely people that will choose something else. And that is, that's great. Like if it works for them, then that's the best option.
Yeah, I don't go down my path. I just turned into the sling collector, and I had one of everything because I was just like, oh, maybe it's this or maybe it's that, and then one for my husband because he keeps adjusting the straps and it drives me mad, and then a sling for this, and yeah, just a collection. I did the same with prams. I just was like, oh, the first one I ever bought, someone gave me some wonderful advice. Don't spend too much. Secondhand pram is absolutely fine. You don't need to have all mod cons. And I just bought this pram and. Because we live on a lot of hills, I went for big wheels, but I don't know, I hated it. I hated the brake, I hated this, I hated that. So second time round, I had about 3 prams before I was happy. I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? That you get sucked into what works for you, or there was a big pram for putting all the stuff underneath, and then there's a little pram for getting around the shops, and there's one that doesn't fit in the car and one that does. There is a lot to consider with sort of transportation, but be it slings or be it prams, and the market is just incredibly overwhelming. What? Let's talk about prams because I've started on my pram
Go for it.
fetish now. I have got rid of them finally. I'm down to one, but
It's a great
eventually
feeling
I'm
when you
going to have
finally
to let
start
it
clearing
go.
it out.
Yeah, exactly. I swear I love that pram more than my husband at times because when you eventually found the one that just does everything you want and just feels comfortable, then yeah,
Hmm.
it's a dream. Because really, my justification for spending all that money was like, well, it's a good few years that you're going to be with this pram, and
Hmm.
it's every day and you're in and out. And if it's something you're battling and fighting with, it's just added stress.
Yeah.
And I had babies that were great pram sleepers, so pram walking was my thing.
Hmm.
But what should parents prioritize, I suppose, when they're looking for a pram, other than
I think it's really important to consider like what you can afford, because some people want to buy something special, and
yeah,
you're right. Like if you're using it all of the time, then spending more money on it is not necessarily a problem. Where the kind of difficulty comes in is knowing what is the right thing to spend all that money on when your baby's not even born yet, and
yeah,
it's really tricky because we want to be prepared and we want to be organized. Um, I often advise people not to buy a buggy until after their baby is born, which is a little bit controversial because you think, well, how am I going to transport the baby?
yeah.
And that's where I say, well, you're going to get a sling,
Car seat,
and
yeah,
it's fine. And obviously, there are certain circumstances for people where no, they need a buggy from the outset, and that's absolutely fine. I think you have to think through your criteria again, like what's your lifestyle like? What kind of things do you imagine you're going to be doing once the baby's arrived? Where will you be using the pram? Does it need to fit in your car in the boot? Do you live in a small flat and it needs to fit, night stowed in a corner? Do you have stairs that you're going to need to carry it up and down? All of these, they're just practical considerations before we've even started thinking about designs and extra functions and things like that. And the other thing is that what's really common with people with prams and buggies when they have a newborn baby is that they buy quite a big, bulky pram travel system with a bassinet cot, and then later on it changes to a seat and it's got a big basket and it's got big wheels and it's super comfy and that's great. And you use it for 6 months and it's perfect. And then all of a sudden your baby gets a bit bigger.
mm,
Um, they come out of the buggy a bit more, come out of the pram a bit more when you're going to events and things, or maybe it's summertime, you're in the park, and then they start toddling and walking about, and you're trying to hold their hand and let them walk whilst also pushing your giant Range
juggernaut,
Rover
yeah,
buggy with one
yeah,
hand. And so what often happens is somewhere between 6 to 12 months, people stop using the really expensive, really big pram that they bought and start wanting something more compact, folds up smaller, lightweight, can push it with one hand, and all of that, that kind of thing. Um, and unless there's a particular reason why you need like the bigger wheels or something like, I mean, we're in London, we live in the city, and quite often don't necessarily need things like that. There's pavements everywhere. But if you lived somewhere more rural or where there was lots of cobblestones, then yeah, you probably want some nice big comfy wheels on your walks. And you may spend more time outdoors anyway. But actually, there are really lovely compact buggies, strollers that can be suitable from birth as well. Sometimes with an addition of a carry cot or like a kind of like a baby nest kind of thing. But also most of them just lay flat, which is actually the only requirement you need for newborn babies, that it lays flat. And those kind of smaller compact strollers, you're actually much more likely to use for 5 years, solid five
interesting,
years
yeah,
until the child
yeah,
starts school. You might use it less and less, but you're always using it. And it's small and it's folded up nice and tidy in the boot. And you go, oh, that's fine. We'll take it anyway, just in case we need it. And you're not going to feel like that about a buggy that takes up your whole boot when you want to put other stuff there, or you're going away for the weekend and you've already got the carrier, but you go, oh, we might need the buggy. Oh, I don't know. You kind of have to make those trade-offs. And so a lot of the time in London in particular,
mm,
and people who live in flats and upstairs and that kind of thing, I will encourage them to have a look at and go and try them out, or see if friends have got any, or go to the baby show or
yeah,
wherever, and just push around a few smaller prams and smaller buggies, ones that in their mind they might have thought, oh well, these are for toddlers. Ask the right questions and see if they are newborn suitable, and if they are, give them a go, because you might be surprised. And actually, you could then end up just buying one thing for your whole kind of parenting journey for that baby from birth until toddlerhood. And if that's not the case, then like we're saying, like look at secondhand. Like maybe you really do want something different for those early weeks,
mm,
but it's probably not worth spending £1,000 on if it's only going to be used for 6 months. So you start to kind of like reevaluate your criteria.
yes, Yeah, it's quite a
and
short
kind of
period of
like
time,
decide
isn't
where
it?
you want to
Yeah,
spend the money and where you don't, or what can you
yeah,
borrow from a friend. You know, if you're only going to use for 6 months, maybe you can just take a loan from somebody for a little while. They might have put something away, they're saving it in case they have another baby, and you could borrow it for a few months. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot to think about, and
yeah.
I think when you're on your own, it's hard to know what the right questions to ask. And I think that's where I come in, is like, ask the right questions to help you narrow it down and
Mm.
to reduce the overwhelm rather than kind of add to it.
Yes, because you're purely focused on those first 6 months, so you're not really thinking beyond newborn phase, and it's such a short period of time. Like the bassinets are always immaculate when you pass them on because they're
Yeah.
barely in them, but a toddler seat, oh, that gets
Yeah,
good
exactly.
because that is going to go for a few years and all of the
Covered
snacks.
in cheesy puffs.
Absolutely, yeah. Every time I justify it and go, oh, I'm going to resell that, then I have a look at it and go, no,
You.
no, I'm not. That phase is definitely not. And it's the same, I think, with car seats as well. You can get them that go from newborn all the way up, but you could also just get a newborn one and then work out what you want after that. I'm
What you
assuming
need
it's a
after.
similar, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah,
Once you've kind of
exactly.
got over that
Sometimes, you can
initial.
buy one of a seat that does everything, and
Mm,
they are more expensive. And after using it for 6 months, just be like, this is not the seat for me. You don't like the
yeah,
way it fits in the car, or the straps are difficult to adjust or anything. And you spent all that money, and then you kind of got to look to spend all that money all over again. Whereas infant carriers are relatively affordable.
hmm,
They range, they range in price, but most of them are pretty much as safe as the others.
yeah,
They all follow the same criterion guidelines. They're all rear facing, whatever. And so, yeah, using that for a few months and start thinking and figuring out what you need without the pressure of needing it immediately, is really good. But also just knowing what's available, what's on the market, because there are seats that will do you from birth to, you know 12 years old, that
yeah,
are really, really decent, that you maybe put off because they're very expensive. But when you realize the alternative journey is buying 4 separate seats
yeah.
over from
Yeah.
newborn to bigger baby to toddler to, child,
Mm,
4 seats is going to cost, they're cheaper seats and they're going to add up.
yeah.
And you may be able to get that one kind of like unicorn seat. So, it works both ways. It's like there are pros and cons to everything.
Mm,
And it really depends on your individual circumstances, and what your best friend or your sister or your aunt did
yeah.
might work for you and it might not.
Yeah. What about these? I didn't have them when I had my first that I was aware of. That you can get baby car seats that they just come up and transform into a pram. So, you can get baby car seats that fit onto a pram, and you can get other ones that just transform into a sort of mini pram. I was
Yeah,
always a bit
so
like, are they safe? Are they okay? Because you're keeping a baby effectively in a car seat for a bit
yeah,
longer.
so in terms of the safety of the seat itself, they will be tested to the same standards as any newborn carrier. So in terms of the safety of the seat as a car seat, it's the same as any other infant carrier.
Yeah.
So that's, not a worry. If it fits your baby safely, you know how to install it, and they're strapped in correctly, that's not a problem. But yeah, of course, you make the point where actually when you then take that out of the car and put the wheels down and use it as a pram, you're keeping the baby in there for an extended period of time, which goes against the guidance of keeping small babies
Yeah.
in their car seats for shorter periods of time. Um, Over the years, they've developed them a bit more, and a lot of them now they have a recline function. So
Uh-huh.
actually, when you're using them in the car, it's safest for the baby to keep it upright, as we've mentioned earlier. In the event of a crash, the baby being more upright is much safer. But when you take it out of the car, you can recline the seat, to take the baby into more of a lie flat position. I still wouldn't say it's ideal for pushing a baby around in all day, but I think for short trips, and I think especially if you don't drive yourself, but you use Ubers and taxis and that kind of thing, then having a safe transportation option for your baby in a vehicle is really important. And then it's easy enough for you to transport it when you're at the other end, or when you get home, to wheel it and push it without having to carry a heavy seat. So I think they have their place, and they can be safe. But yeah, like everything else, weighing up like what you need it for and is it worth it.
Oh, just the dream of getting a sleeping child out of a car and keeping them asleep when
Keeping
you're
them
not having to
asleep.
transfer them.
Yeah.
That was always just a nightmare for me. What do you think? What do parents buy? And I know I'm guilty of doing this, that they absolutely probably don't need. What do you find that lots of parents kind of go, "Oh, I've got all this," or is it different for
Um,
different people?
Often they're the things that you buy before the baby's born. So
Mm,
um, there might be like a parent that's planning to try and breastfeed, but before the baby's born, they buy bottles just in case,
Yeah.
or they buy a breast pump because they think that pumping is kind of part and parcel of breastfeeding as well. And then the baby's born, and maybe like they take to breastfeeding and goes really well, and they don't need the bottles, and they don't need the breast pump either. And so it's kind of like just wasted money. And the thing is, these days it's so easy to buy things very, very quickly that it's much better to wait and see what you might need. Wait until the baby is here. Wait until you have decided you need a bottle, or you've had advice to pump from a feeding specialist in the hospital, or privately or whatever. Then they can recommend the kind of pump that you need to get. Having everything you might possibly need just in case is a bit of a trap for us, because it costs us so much money. We have all this equipment that we think we need to learn how to use before our baby's arrived as well, which is like, who's got the time for that, And then it turns out you only need quarter of it or half of it, and you could have saved the money, but also the energy and effort and kind of, headspace for it. So I find, feeding equipment is a big one. Multiple carriers, slings and carriers. So, having more than one before baby's even arrived, or like knowing you've got something that will be really suitable for newborn, but already buying the thing that will be good for toddler. But the thing is, it's crazy how quick the market moves. By the time, your newborn is a toddler, there might be something way better suited to your circumstances, or the thing that you just bought brand new, state of the art, really expensive might still be the best thing for you, but in 18 months time, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So, having things ready just in case, I think, is the big trap. Big cots, high chairs. You don't need a high chair for the first 6 months, so you might as well keep the space in your house until you need it. Your baby might never sleep in a cot, so wait and see how well they sleep in a Moses basket, or a bassinet, or a next to me crib before you go and splash out on your big, baby to toddler size cots. I think wait and see. Like, even clothing, you don't know how big baby's going to be born. You don't know what size they're going to be in when the seasons change. And nothing is difficult for us to get hold of these days.
Yeah, it's hard though, because you're fighting that nesting urge, aren't you? And that nesting urge is like prep, 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 prep. I need
Yeah.
this, I need that,
I would invest.
Uh,
I would personally try to invest that energy into, your home or whatever as it already exists. Tidying, decluttering, cleaning corners that you're not going to get to for the next year when you've got a little baby. Reorganize your kitchen cabinets, fold your clothes. Sort
Speak
your
to your
wardrobe
local
out.
sling expert, get some advice. Yeah, make those
Yeah.
baby
Yeah,
contacts, because
exactly.
that's what you
Spend time
need.
doing the thinking and the
Yeah.
research and the conversations, but not necessarily taking that jump into, shopping or,
Because a lot of it, I think, as well as all the amazing advice, what I kind of get from you is that you're there at the most vulnerable time. They're either just about to have a baby, or they're in that newborn phase, and a lot of it is to do with confidence
yeah,
and, assurance. And I think, part of not knowing what you're doing, yes, you can give some practical advice, but help parents kind of just build that confidence, really? When can you sense that this consultation maybe is 10 minutes on slings, but it's more about just reassurance and understanding, having been there yourself 3 times,
um, yeah, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. I'd be in people's homes with newborn babies, um, just to show them the slings and things, and they actually pick it up really quickly, really well, and we're confident everything's fine. And it turns out actually the time is better spent just chatting or talking about other stuff.
Yeah.
Usually, often it's like, it's parents who have a lot of questions that often end up being the ones who need a little bit more reassurance. And a lot of the time, they are already doing everything perfect.
Yeah.
We all want the best for our babies and our children, and we have our own instincts. And I think that sometimes just being told by an external kind of voice, like, you're already doing everything you need to do and you're already doing so well, is all you need to hear.
Yeah.
Just, if the answers to their questions can just be, yeah, you're doing great. Yeah, you've made
Yeah.
the right choice. Yeah, it's working for you. It's working out. You're learning your baby.
Mm.
Um, I think it's so important. I think that validation and reassurance is so important. I think that we don't always trust our instincts, but
Yes.
they're there. They're still
Yeah.
there. We just have so much kind of like outside noise that
Mm.
we can't hear
Yeah.
what's kind of coming from inside ourselves. So being given permission to go back to basics and listen to what you want to do. And a lot of the time, if I'm asked a question, I won't give an answer. I'll say, well, how do you feel? What
Mm.
would you like to do? Like, what's your gut telling you?
Yeah.
And no one ever gives a wrong answer because they know. So that's really nice, giving them the space to answer their own questions and therefore start believing in their own voice and their own instincts. I think that's really important.
That's the most fundamental thing that was like an epiphany to me at some point when I suddenly realized that, because I think it's a new experience and you're in a completely different ballpark to your normal life. And so you read books, and you try and take information, you try and learn, and suddenly realizing that all of that was well and good, but actually learning to tune into your own instinct and put that chatter and that sort of like academic brain to one side and tune into an instinct was suddenly like a game changer. I was like, oh my God, yes. I can sense when my baby's hungry. It's not, I'm putting a timer on every 3 hours going, you must be hungry.
Yeah,
Don't listen to your child, listen to your instincts. What do you feel? And suddenly you're like, oh wow, this is a whole other level of something I hadn't even tapped into before.
yeah,
And I swear that's where sort of baby brain comes from. It's that you've got to filter everything else out so that you can tune in with what's essential, which is you communicating and understanding and learning your baby.
absolutely.
Which is
Yeah.
why, everything else goes off the wall. And I can't remember what I did 2 minutes ago, but it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it's not the
Baby
most
brain
important thing
never
right now.
endangers a baby. It's just you're
Exactly.
filtering out the rest of life so that you can
Yeah.
just zone in on that. That was just like, I mean, I think it took 2 children before I really got into that. But gosh,
Yeah.
confidence and understanding and knowing that you will know is it's a hard one to
It's
sort of let go
yeah.
of.
It's difficult, but when you kind of get there, it's so empowering, to
Yeah.
feel the confidence and trust in yourself,
Mm.
is so empowering. And then to know that you wonderful, confident human being, is raising this child that's
Yeah,
going to
you're
grow
out
up to
there
be
mothering.
also
Yeah.
confident and believe in themselves and their own voice. That's really important. Yeah.
Would you say what's the most kind of rewarding part of what you do?
I think exactly that, seeing parents come into parenthood, blossom into parenthood. That sounds ridiculous, but like seeing them rise to the occasion and rise to the challenge, and succeed. I think that's really what I love. Coming to a consultation in the beginning, and there's anxiety, nervousness, and lots of questions, and leaving at the end with happy, confident parents who are just enjoying their baby. I think that's the most rewarding thing.
Oh wow. Oh, wish I'd found you all those years ago, Martha. But how
Wish
can
I'd found me
oh,
too.
I'd have been there every day, just like needy, just like help me. Today I can't do it. So how can people find you? If you're expecting or you've hit that kind of newborn phase, how can we find you at the Baby Brain?
You can find me wherever you like. So I have a website,
Mhm.
which is just thebabybrain.org. I'm on Instagram, which is thebabybrain_London. If you go on any one of my things, you'll find links to contact me in a million other ways as well. I'm always happy to answer WhatsApps and emails, Instagram messages and that kind of thing. You can just type it in on Google Maps, on Google the Baby Brain, and you'll find me and you'll be able to contact me through there. So yeah.
And one final piece of advice to any parents listening who are just feeling a bit overwhelmed right now, what would you say?
Um, I would say that you know best and you have all the answers inside you somewhere. You just have to tune in to hear them.
She's Martha. And Martha, so lovely to talk to you again. I can't wait to do some more work with you and our newborns, but it was wonderful to chat. Do look Martha up. We will put her details at the end of this podcast as well. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
Care.
Please like and subscribe to my mum's podcast.